Welcome to Technology for People in a Hurry. Today, we're diving into nerd, Saviour, King, Bill Gates, and his quest to shape our world by Anupreeta Das. This isn't just a story about a tech mogul, it's a thought-provoking look at what happens when wealth, innovation, and influence collide on a global scale. Stick around, because by the end of this episode, you'll see Gates in a new light and question how ambition shapes the world we live in. Let's start with the nerd archetype. Gates is often portrayed as the quintessential computer geek who turned a passion for coding into a fortune. But how much of that story is reality, and how much was carefully crafted? From his Harvard days to the rise of Microsoft, we're invited to reconsider the Gates we think we know. Yes, he was a programming prodigy, but he was also a fierce competitor, a sharp negotiator, and a visionary who played the long game with precision. Now, let's tackle the duality of billionaire and savior. Gates embodies the archetype of the tech mogul, immense wealth paired with a drive to change the world. But it's not that simple. This story doesn't stop at admiration. It looks at how Gates wields his power, not just through philanthropy, but as someone who operates like a king, with all the complexities and contradictions that come with it. His decision-making, ambition, and yes, his flaws are all laid bare. Take the Gates Foundation, for example. It's one of the most powerful philanthropic organizations in the world. Its achievements are staggering, fighting diseases, funding education, driving innovation. But it also raises a tough question: how much of Gates's philanthropic legacy is about genuine impact, and how much is about control or crafting an image? This isn't a story of easy answers. It's a deep dive into the messy middle. And then there's the king, the commanding, sometimes autocratic Gates. This isn't the man we see in interviews or TED Talks. This is the Gates who demanded perfection, who outmaneuvered competitors, and who, let's be honest, probably ruffled more than a few feathers along the way. This book captures the human behind the legend, ambitious, relentless, and unapologetically driven. But what's most compelling is Gates's role in shaping the world. Through Microsoft, he didn't just create software, he laid the foundation for the digital revolution. Windows, Office, the Azure cloud platform, and recent investments in AI, these aren't just products. They're milestones that have fundamentally changed how we live, work, and communicate. Let's start with Bill Gates as the captain of Microsoft. Picture this: a tech prodigy and college dropout building one of the world's most influential companies. Gates wasn't just steering a ship, he was building a fleet, one innovation at a time. But even the most formidable ships can hit an iceberg, and for Gates, that iceberg was antitrust. Now, rewind to the late 1990s. Microsoft was at its peak, the undisputed king of software. Windows was on nearly every computer, and Microsoft Office powered businesses worldwide. But then came Netscape, a scrappy startup with a revolutionary idea: the web browser. Netscape wasn't just a product, it was a movement, a gateway to the internet that promised to change everything. Gates saw the threat immediately. His response? Internet Explorer. Not just as a product, but as a weapon, bundled for free with Windows. A brilliant strategy, right? Well, not everyone agreed. The US Department of Justice called it a monopoly. What followed was the first major antitrust case of the tech era, a battle that reshaped the way we think about big tech. Context matters here. Back in the 90s, Microsoft wasn't just a company, it was the software industry. Its dominance was so absolute that investors wouldn't fund startups without asking one question: how will you compete with Microsoft? Gates wasn't just running a company, he was a juggernaut. Yet Gates didn't see himself as Goliath. Operating out of Seattle, far from Silicon Valley, he saw Microsoft as the underdog, driven by paranoia. Andy Grove of Intel put it best: only the paranoid survive. Gates believed that technological disruption could topple even the biggest giants overnight. So when Netscape came along, bundling Internet Explorer wasn't just a tactic, it was a survival strategy. But survival strategies depend on perspective. To Gates, bundling was necessary. To Silicon Valley and the Justice Department, it was overreach. The antitrust case became more than a legal battle, it was a clash of cultures. Microsoft, the Seattle outsider, versus Silicon Valley startups, fueled by agility and disruption. While the case dragged on, Gates was already pivoting Microsoft toward the internet. In 1995, a year after Netscape's rise, he issued a company-wide memo declaring the internet the next big thing. He wasn't just reacting, he was recalibrating. But recalibration wasn't enough to shield him from the fallout. Gates was thrust into politics and public relations, a realm far removed from the world of logic and code he thrived in. To the media, he became a villain, a monopolist crushing innovation. The impact was immense. Gates described it as standing on a narrow mountaintop with nowhere to go but down. And down he went. In 2000, at just 45 years old, Gates stepped down as Microsoft's CEO, marking the end of an era. But here's the thing about Bill Gates, he doesn't stay down for long. The antitrust case taught him a harsh lesson. Power isn't just about market share, it's about perception. Over the next 2 decades, he reinvented himself, not just as a philanthropist, but as a global savior. The Gates Foundation became a powerhouse in public health and education, and Gates's narrative shifted from monopolist to humanitarian. Yet, this transformation wasn't just about optics. The same precision that fueled Microsoft's dominance now drove his global health initiatives. Behind every headline celebrating his philanthropic work was a carefully curated narrative, shaped with the same strategic mind that once disrupted the tech world. Now, let's dive into Gates's journey from tech titan to global philanthropist. This isn't just a story of a billionaire giving away his fortune. It's about reinvention, power, and redefining what it means to shape the world. Picture this. It's 1995. Gates is already a household name, synonymous with Microsoft and success. But everything shifts after a chance meeting orchestrated by his mother. She introduces Gates to Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha, during a small gathering at their family vacation home. Gates is skeptical. Why meet a stock trader? Yet, what begins as a polite hello turns into a marathon 13-hour conversation. By the end, Gates and Buffett have found a kindred connection, sharing philosophies on wealth, work, and life. This wasn't just the start of a friendship, it was the spark of Gates's transformation. Their bond was more than casual, it was catalytic. Buffett's methodical approach to wealth deeply resonated with Gates, and Gates's visionary mindset intrigued Buffett. Together, they explored not just how to accumulate wealth, but how to use it to leave a lasting impact. And by 2000, Gates took a bold step. He stepped down as Microsoft CEO to focus on something far bigger than software, changing the world through philanthropy. This wasn't just a pivot, it was a reinvention. Inspired by the legacies of Rockefeller and Carnegie, Gates embraced the belief that immense wealth comes with immense responsibility. He co-founded the Gates Foundation with Melinda, committing to solving some of the world's most pressing problems, eradicating diseases, improving education, tackling climate change. But here's the key: Gates didn't just write checks. He got involved, deeply involved. As Buffett put it, giving away money is easy, spending time on it is hard. Buffett himself became a pivotal player. In 2005, he pledged 99% of his fortune to philanthropy, with the Gates Foundation as the primary beneficiary. Why? Because he trusted Gates and Melinda's expertise to make his wealth work for humanity. Over the next 2 decades, their partnership turned the Gates Foundation into a global force. Their mantra? Impatient optimism. They believed in pursuing immediate results while remaining hopeful about the long-term impact of their work. But Gates wasn't interested in creating a dynasty. Unlike other family foundations designed to last for generations, the Gates Foundation had a countdown. Gates announced a plan to spend down its wealth within 25 years. For him, it wasn't about building a legacy, it was about making tangible change in his lifetime. It was philanthropy with urgency, driven by a clear focus on action. Then, the story takes a darker turn. The carefully curated image of Gates as the untouchable intellectual and family man began to unravel. Allegations surfaced during the COVID-19 pandemic, ties to Jeffrey Epstein, whispers of infidelity, and revelations of Gates's wilder days in his youth. His once spotless reputation faced intense public scrutiny. The Epstein connection, in particular, became a lightning rod. Gates claimed their relationship was strictly professional, aimed at funding global initiatives. But Epstein's criminal past was no secret. He'd been convicted in 2008. Why would someone as meticulous as Gates associate with such a controversial figure? Was it poor judgment? A misstep in his pursuit of philanthropic connections? Whatever the reason, the backlash was swift and severe. Suddenly, Gates wasn't just a philanthropist, he was a flawed human being in the public eye. The narrative shifted from admiration to skepticism. But in those cracks, something real began to emerge, a more nuanced, complicated version of Bill Gates. Let's dive deeper into the complex dynamics between Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. Gates, the epitome of modern wealth, lives extravagantly, private jets, sprawling estates, luxury yachts. His lifestyle screams opulence. Meanwhile, Buffett is the billionaire who drives his own car, eats fast food, and still lives in the Omaha home he bought decades ago. On the surface, it's frugality versus extravagance, but their dynamic is far deeper than appearances. Here's the irony. Gates, with all his wealth and influence, admired Buffett for something money couldn't buy: his approach to relationships. Buffett had an unconventional but seemingly harmonious arrangement with his first wife, Susan. She pursued her passions, and he had the freedom to find companionship elsewhere, all while maintaining a close bond until her passing. Gates may have envied this balance, but his reality was different. Melinda French Gates demanded structure and exclusivity. When their marriage ended after 26 years, it wasn't just the tabloids buzzing, it was a reflection of contrasting personal expectations. Adding fuel to the fire were whispers of Gates's extramarital affairs. Stories of a fling with a Russian bridge player and an alleged relationship with a foundation intern painted a picture of a man whose private life was as scrutinized as his professional legacy. Even before these headlines, Gates's relationships were complicated. Despite his fame, he often misreads social cues, confusing admiration for intimacy, leading to moments that were as awkward as they were telling. Behind the scenes, Melinda played a significant role in managing Gates's life. She controlled his schedule, replaced staff she distrusted, and ran their home like a fortress. In contrast, Gates found solace in his visits to Buffett in Omaha. There, he could relax, free from the rigid systems of his Seattle life. But the Epstein connection changed everything. Gates's decision to meet with Jeffrey Epstein after Epstein's conviction sparked outrage. Gates claimed these interactions were for philanthropic purposes, but the optics were damning. Epstein's reputation as a manipulative broker for billionaires left Gates's judgment in question. For Melinda, this was the breaking point. The divorce announcement in 2021 shocked the world. Publicly amicable, it was anything but. Behind closed doors, they'd been in counseling for years. Post-divorce, Melinda redefined herself as a fierce advocate for gender equality and family planning. She didn't just step away, she stepped up. Meanwhile, Buffett began to distance himself from Gates. Known for avoiding conflict, Buffett chose neutrality during the divorce, but also grew disillusioned with the Gates Foundation. Its sprawling bureaucracy clashed with Buffett's lean and efficient model at Berkshire Hathaway. He also disapproved of Gates's autocratic style, which alienated colleagues and overshadowed the foundation's mission. Buffett's subtle reminders to Gates to value relationships and humility spoke volumes about their dynamic. By 2023, the strain was clear. The Gates Foundation announced it might not receive Buffett's posthumous donations. Instead, Buffett's wealth would be distributed through his children's foundations, signaling a significant shift in their partnership. Let's bring this journey to a close. This biography does something extraordinary. It strips away the carefully constructed layers of Gates's public persona. He's not just the archetypal tech genius turned global savior. He's a deeply complicated individual, forged by ambition, genius, and human imperfection. His path from a Harvard dropout to a software juggernaut, then from a controversial CEO to a philanthropic powerhouse, is a masterclass in contradictions. Here's what we can take away. First, the billionaires we see aren't just born, they're built. Gates's narrative, like many others, has been carefully curated. From his days as a ruthless competitor in the tech world to his emergence as a global philanthropist, Every step of his public journey has been meticulously managed. But peel back the glossy exterior, and you find the messy, flawed reality of a man grappling with ego, ambition, and mistakes. The lesson? Celebrate the achievements, sure, but don't fall for the myth. Behind the wealth and success is a human being, just as imperfect as anyone else. Second, wealth is a tool, a lever with incredible reach. Gates has used his fortune in ways most of us can't even fathom. His philanthropic efforts are historic, with tens of billions channeled into fighting disease, poverty, and inequality. But here's the flip side. Wealth also creates power, and power tends to operate on its own terms. Gates's initiatives reflect his brilliance, but they also show the dangers of concentrated influence. Billionaire philanthropy is impactful, yes, but it's also selective, focused on problems the wealthy choose to address, not necessarily the issues that affect everyone. It's a sobering reminder that systemic solutions can't hinge on individual goodwill alone. Finally, let's talk about ambition. Gates's drive to solve global challenges is both admirable and cautionary. His efforts to combat climate change, eradicate disease, and tackle inequity are transformative. But there's a catch. Gates, like many ultra-successful individuals, tends to view the world as a series of solvable puzzles. His track record breeds a confidence that can border on hubris, the belief that expertise in one domain translates seamlessly to every domain. And that mindset? It's not just flawed, it can have dangerous consequences. The smartest person in the room isn't always right, especially when the stakes are global. Thanks for joining me on this journey. If you had billions and the power to change anything, what's the first thing you would fix? Share your ideas in the comments. I'd love to hear them. If this video got you thinking, smash that like button and hit subscribe so you don't miss more stories like this. See you in the next one.